Hey Denver, this is CityCast Denver host Bree Davies. At the end of today's episode, we've got a sponsored segment with Elizabeth Martinez of Compass Real Estate, who's going to join me to explore the Ruby Hill neighborhood, from its history to what it's actually like to live near Levitt Pavilion and what homes in the area are going for right now. Brought to you by Compass Real Estate. So stick around after the show if you've ever wondered what it's like to put down roots in Ruby Hill. Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Producer Paul Caroli, good morning.
Hey, what's up, Bree?
And we have the founder of the investigative news outlet The Lever, the host of Master Plan Podcast, David Sirota, is back. Hi, David.
Hi. It's good to see you guys.
Good to see you, too. Today, we're talking about the second season of your podcast, Master Plan, and Trump and how he's using executive power. Plus, we're going to be touching on captive pricing at the airport, which we talked about last week, but we're talking specifically about airports this week. And then we've got a big hot take from you, David, which I'm excited to hear, but we'll save that to the very end. Let's start with Master Plan Season 2, The Kingmakers. It just launched. Last season, you talked about money in politics. This season, you're focusing on this conservative legal theory called, quote, the unitary executive theory. David, you need to give us the quick explainer on what that means.
Okay, so we're talking right now on the eve of, or with the No Kings protest on coming up, and I think there's a lot of talk about kings and is Donald Trump behaving like a king, and what our season looks to do is show that the creation of the president or the transformation of the president into a king did not happen only because of, or even primarily because of, Donald Trump. That it has been a long scheme to concentrate power in the executive branch by a specific set of people with a specific set of goals. They have a vision of a president as a quasi-king. And this started after the Watergate era. Watergate back in the day was seen as a scandal about executive power. It was the so-called imperial presidency. And it wasn't just a president who was using the powers of the executive branch to target his political enemies, but it was in the context of a Nixon presidency that was doing all sorts of things that were at the time relatively unprecedented. Like, for instance, Richard Nixon campaigned promising to end the Vietnam War, and within months of taking office was secretly, without authorization from Congress, without really public knowledge at all, was secretly expanding the war. Richard Nixon started cutting the budget, essentially withholding funds that had already been appropriated from Congress for various state projects. Now, we remember this. This all sounds familiar, right? Like right. Donald Trump saying, I'm not going to release money that Congress has already passed for Colorado. Donald Trump launching a war with no authorization at all. He is using some of the powers that were quite familiar to people back in the Watergate era, and that Congress, at least initially, had tried to stop after Watergate exploded. And what we tell in this, and what we show with never before reported documents and the like, what we show is that the effort to rebuild the imperial presidency after Watergate, in the face of those post-Watergate reforms, the effort to rebuild it and make it even more powerful, to turn the presidency into a king, that is a story that has taken about 50 years, and that's what we uncover.
Well, it's a great podcast so far. The first episode we listened to is out now, and it's just great. I mean, there's this whole scene about how Nixon tries to supersede Congress's power of the purse and choose to pull back money from some road projects, leaving literally roads unfinished, unpaved in Missouri. Fascinating chapter in history. But I want to talk about Coloradans now. I think that's what people are interested in. How are Coloradans feeling this now? This arcane legal theory that's powering the Trump administration.
Well, I think first and foremost, what we've seen it in our legislature, where the president is announcing, the executive branch is announcing that it's not going to make grants that Congress has already put in place, right? It's just going to simply withhold environmental funding, transportation funding, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the suspicion is, rightly so, that the suspicion is that that's being targeted, those cuts are being targeted, those rescissions are being targeted at Colorado because Donald Trump sees Colorado as a blue state. Donald Trump, for instance, wants Tina Peters released. And so this is, I think, what we're experiencing here, the instability of, are we going to have funding for transportation projects? Are we going to have funding for environmental projects, for climate projects? This has created a sort of instability in state budgeting, which will ultimately trickle down to everybody in the state. And I think what's really bad about this in particular is that it's not even predictable, right? It's like Donald Trump is essentially asserting the right to wake up in the morning, say, I don't like what Colorado's doing, or some Colorado politician out there said something I didn't like. And guess what? All of a sudden, there's not going to be this or that funding that has already been appropriated. And what's difficult about that is it's hard to plan for that. And it's one thing where Congress in a budget cycle says, all right, we're not going to fund these things. The legislature, the state government has time to the local communities have time to adjust to that. This is like Donald Trump waking up and saying, I'm just going to use what's called impoundment power or rescission power. And you hearken back to what happened in the Watergate era. It's exactly right as you describe it. There was one of the big fights early on in the Nixon administration was Nixon decided to simply stop money that was supposed to be funding roads, in particular in Missouri, where roads were literally being built and then they couldn't continue to be built because Richard Nixon said, I am using the so-called impoundment power to not spend the money that Congress has by law told me to spend. And there was a huge fight over this. And ultimately, Congress passed a law explicitly saying, which is kind of ridiculous. It's like belt and suspenders because it's right in the Constitution. The power of the purse is Congress's alone. Like that's not really up for debate. But Congress passed a law being like, hey, the Constitution here, like you got to follow this. You can't just cut money. But clearly, 50 years later, what Donald Trump is trying to do is trying to reopen that argument to say that the president gets to decide what spending happens whenever he wants for any reason he wants and what spending doesn't happen.
Do you think we're in even more imminent danger of this just based on technology? I'm just thinking about how Trump can like wake up and tweet from the toilet, essentially. You know, we're not waiting for the evening news to get, you know what I mean?
I mean, absolutely. But I think it's also coupled with the fact that there doesn't seem to be a real process. I mean, that like it's not, it doesn't, like, I don't have the sense that a lot of the rescission decisions when it comes to, and the impoundment decisions when it comes to cutting money are really well thought out and targeted by like a budget process and a budget staff. It seems much more simply that like Donald Trump read a headline about Colorado and just says, cut the funding, right? Like and that is literally what you do not want in a civilization, right? Like you want there to be a process. Even if you don't like the outcome of a process, at least there's a process. I don't know if everyone remembers back in the first few weeks of Trump's presidency. I mean, they like sent out like a 2-page letter being like, all federal funding is just frozen right now. Like it was like I don't know, a 500 billion, a trillion, whatever it was. And it was like, that's not how a civilization works. Like that is not how a civilization works. That's not how America works.
That's how they used to work. The divine right of the kings.
Well, yes,
Louis the
14th. Like, totally. But like the interesting thing about this is like the Constitution does leave a lot of like vague spaces. I think the founders were like, look, the future generations are going to fill in how this all works. So we don't want to be too specific. But on the certain things that they are specific on, I think it was like intentional. Congress gets to just have the power of the purse because it's bad to have like one dude
person,
sitting on a mountain of money deciding who gets the money, right? The Constitution at its core, you could say a lot of things about it. I don't agree with this. I think it does this. I think we can all agree that it's like an anti-monarch, anti-king document, right? Like, okay, we can probably all agree on that. And one of the foundations of that is like the branch of government that's closest to the people, where each community has a representative who has to come back and answer to us. That is the branch that has the supreme power of the purse. And Donald Trump is like challenging that. And I think it seems esoteric, but it is really the most important power. And by the way, that extends to wars, right? We know, and as we trace in this series, Master Plan, that wars tend to not end until the money is cut off. And so if Donald Trump is allowed to sort of set a precedent of the president gets to decide all the spending decisions whenever he wants at any time for any reason at all, I mean, that doesn't just have domestic implications. It's got like, do we go to war because the guy can wake up in the morning and decide I want to invade, I want to bomb? Like that is, again, not the way it's supposed to work.
David, let me play back to Colorado.
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting about this to me. We know Trump is doing this. What the Democrats in Colorado who run Colorado have to decide is how to respond to it.
Right.
And I think that's what these primaries leading up to June are all about, is how are we going to respond? What is the strategy that the Democrats want to pursue? So after doing all this research into this history of how Trump and his predecessors have implemented this theory, what has it changed how you look at, say, how Governor Polis is navigating this new environment?
Look, I think that when it comes to a situation like Donald Trump is going to cut federal funding for Colorado unless Jared Polis releases Tina Peters. Let's just like use that as an example.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Right?
Because we haven't seen any conversation about that from the Polis directly at all.
And I want to overlay on top of this the fact that when it comes to federal money, we are uniquely unable to raise taxes to backfill potential budget cut holes from the federal government.
You're talking
I mean,
about
I don't
Tabor.
think
Or Tabor.
because of Tabor, right?
Okay.
So we are uniquely vulnerable to the worst impacts of federal budget cuts because we can't really raise revenue in a way that every other state in the country can. Now, just as a side note, I don't think you can solve federal budget cuts purely through state tax increases and the like, but you can mitigate at least some of them, but we really truly can't because of Tabor. So when I think of like Polis, the Tina Peters situation, Trump threatening cuts, I think at one level, trying to navigate how do we come to some sort of détente with Trump, who is the president, in terms of preventing him from punishing us budgetarily over something that is not a budgetary matter. I think acknowledging that is a really tough situation, I think it is a really tough situation. I tend to think, though, once you start saying the president can say who gets out of jail or how the justice system works, justice is supposed to be blind. Obviously, it's not. Without fear, it's not really in the real world. But like the basic idea that like a president shouldn't be able to like pressure a governor to get his political ally out of jail from a trial that happened. It's like that's banana republic stuff. Right. I mean, that is really, really dangerous stuff. And so I come down on, it's a long way of saying, I think it's worth thinking through how do we come up with a détente when it comes to, and to be clear, I'm not saying like, appease Donald Trump. I'm just saying like Zoran Mamdani, as an example, went to the White House with similar fears of budget cuts in New York and sort of charmed Donald Trump, like smart strategy. Zoran Mamdani did not, as far as I can tell, compromise, his policy values or the like, but clearly thinking through how do I create a détente? I think like the Tina Peters situation has to be a red line. You can't ruin your state's criminal justice system because you've been bullied by the president. Because by the way, on top of that, I think if you do that, you're only encouraging the bully. Right. And then the next demand comes down. Right. There's a certain set of issues where you have to say, I cannot negotiate on these things because negotiating on these things sort of attacks the pillars of our civilization. Like the basic idea that we have a jury trial, somebody gets convicted, and I don't get to be bullied into changing that. Like that's a basic pillar of civilization.
But I think we have a little bit different here with Mom Johnny and Polis. Is Polis does have this very specific ask from the president, essentially. Is like he can't really, but would you? There's no gray area. It's either release Tina Peters or don't.
I know.
You know?
I know. And so I think we're really in a very difficult situation. And so I think that when we hear our Congress people or our Attorney General talking about trying to legally say that impounding congressionally passed funds is illegal, is not allowed, and that using the judiciary, that is what the judiciary is supposed to be for, to a co-equal branch of government, to say that these kinds of cuts arbitrarily just by the executive branch fiat are illegal. To me, that is the first and foremost thing when it comes to these budget cuts that needs to happen, and that is in a sense happening. These are being challenged in court. But I also agree. I also know that like relying on the courts is like you don't know how they're going to go, and Trump is packing the courts. So we're in a tough situation.
We got to move on. We're going long. We're going long.
Yeah.
Go for it.
On that last note, March 28th is going to be the big day. No King's protest and the Democratic State Assembly down in Pueblo. So that's the next day to watch on this conversation. But we should move on.
And check out Master Plan. You can hear much more of this conversation. Okay, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we're talking captive pricing at the airport. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. We talk a lot about building a stronger Denver, and one of the smartest investments that you can make, your kids' health. That's why Denver Health is proud to tell Denverites about its Denver Health school-based health centers, 19 health clinics located right inside Denver Public Schools. Students can get medical care, mental health counseling, dental services, sports physicals, immunizations, and more, all without leaving their campus. You ever had to make a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment for a child when the dentist office is open till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon? If they can do it right at school, it's like doesn't even mess up their day at all. And here's the big one. Services are provided at no cost to families. It's convenient, it's confidential, and it helps students stay healthy, focused, and ready to learn. So if you're a DPS parent, guardian, or student, this is one Denver resource worth knowing about. Learn more about how Denver Health supports our kids at denverhealth.org/SBHC. That's denverhealth.org/SBHC. Hey, did you know CityCast Denver has a perks program? Every week, we're highlighting some standout deals from our favorite businesses in town to help you support local and save some money. It's a win-win. Here's a highlight from this week. Coming to Denver or planning a staycation? Reserve your Mile High Experience box with Green Door. Choose edibles or flour, plus Colorado-made snacks and travel essentials, ready for pickup at our trusted local dispensary partner. Everything you need to elevate your trip and enjoy local experiences. And you can use our code DENVERPERK for $10 off. These businesses are offering deals to CityCast readers and listeners because they know you're the most engaged and passionate Denverites. To see a full list, just visit denver.citycast.fm/perks. It's a great way to check out new restaurants, shops, and events in your city without breaking your budget. And I love that for you. And by the way, if you have a local business, you can offer your deals on our perks page too. Visit denver.citycast.fm/perks to learn more today. Okay, we're back. We talked about captive pricing last week, Paul, when we were talking about the legislature. And the thing that I think we talked about mostly was really like the price of hot dogs at Ballerina. But this is an issue that exists in other spaces, particularly the airport, which Steve Steger at 9 News did some investigating into and found that there's a policy at DIA that says anything sold inside the airport shouldn't get priced at more than 15% of the street price. So no more than a 15% markup of what you can buy outside of the airport. So if you get a coffee at Starbucks or Novo Coffee, it shouldn't cost more than 15% of what they charge for that same cup of coffee outside the airport. More on Starbucks later. That's a whole other issue. But Steve Stinger and his team found that many items in the airport are being sold way above this cap. David, I assume you were at the airport a lot. Have you?
Periodically, yes.
Is there a thing that you buy that you're just like begrudgingly buying when you're at the airport because you need it, but you're starving, or you like your phone charger? What's the thing?
The thing is the coffee machine, the like automated coffee machine. It starts with an I. The ill something.
I know
it's
it
like
well. Illy, maybe.
Oh yeah,
yeah, right. Yeah, and it's expensive. It's not cheap. It looks like a device from the Jetsons. Like it's like the
robot
cup
coffee
comes out. Yeah, it's like robot coffee. Look, I think when it comes to these captive pricing discussions, I think we often forget that where we're being gouged is on public property. Okay, the airport is a piece of public property, meaning we all, figuratively speaking, own a little piece of it. It's the same thing, by the way, for the ski resorts, right? The ski resorts are on public land. You could even argue that some of our stadiums are publicly subsidized. And so I think that part of the bargain should be, if you're doing business on public property, you have some obligation to the public. Like, we have a right to say there are certain conditions in which you can do business on public property. And if you don't want to do business on public property under those conditions, then leave or don't have your store there, right? So this is not like the government saying what prices have to be everywhere. We have to narrow our thinking about this as, what should we allow on public property? And I think it's fair for the government to say, you essentially cannot price gouge at a certain level, beyond a certain level. Because let's remember one thing. At the airport, when we talk about prices that are 15% higher than quote unquote street prices, please let's remember that the street price is a profitable price already.
Sure.
So we're saying, like, you can't add 15% more on top of the profitable price just because you can, just because people are behind a security line waiting for their plane ride, and therefore they are captive. That seems to me to be the least we could do.
And I love that you brought that up, because that's actually when it changed, right? Is 9/11 changed how the airports were essentially functioning, because prior to that, you could go hang out at the airport. I mean,
Exactly.
I remember doing this as a teenager. It's like a mall. So they had a wider audience. Well, now you literally have this captive audience. But Paul, do you want to talk really quickly? Because this sort of links back to something that we talk about a lot, which is the concession, who can sell in there, and those contracts, who they're awarded to. And Denver is very proud to say all of the local businesses that get these concession contracts, which is cool. But the auditor's office actually looked into how these contracts were awarded to these businesses. And Paul, what did he find?
I mean, well, he found a lot of things. He found that there had been chronic problems at the airport for like 25 years, ever since it was built in the 90s. But gosh, this is one of my favorite topics. After we talked to Representative
Control
Zokai,
yourself, Paul.
I know I got so distracted by the stadiums and the hot dogs. I was like, when are we going to, I didn't get to the airports, but the airports is its own thing. And I think with Representative Zokai, I was making like, I was saying, I didn't think that the prospects of the bill were very good, because it's very easy to make a pro-business case against it. And, at the legislature, that makes it a tougher road. But had she just focused on the airport, I think it might have been a different situation, because this whole like how much profit you can make, how much you can jack up prices, like I think there's some misaligned incentives going on with the system, with their contracts. So the way that it works is the airport puts out requests for proposals when they have a space for lease. When a contract expires or a business fails, they'll say, hey, everybody, we got this new space. It's great space. They got electrical outlets. There's a sink in there. You could open a restaurant if you want. And then anyone can sign up. And who typically gets these contracts, in it seems like 2/3 of the cases at the airport, are concessionaire companies that operate multiple brands or license brands from local restaurateurs. Like, for example, Mercantile, founded by Alex Seidel, acclaimed local chef. He licensed the brand for his restaurant that operated at Union Station to the airport. It now operates in Concourse A. It was the 5th most profitable restaurant in DIA last year, $12 million in gross sales. He got between 2 and 7% of that money. That's the licensing deal. The airport took between 15 and 18%. These numbers are from the Denver Post a couple of years ago who reported on this. And then the concessionaire company, which actually hires and fires the employees, buys all the materials, buys all the food, operates the space, does any build out that's necessary of the space, they get the rest. So when we're talking about the markup that these concessionaires are permitted to offer, which, by the way, the airport increased from 10 to 15%, according to Steve Steger. I thought that was the most explosive detail, that the airport increased that in 2022. It's a misaligned incentive because the airport profits when the price goes up as well.
That's right.
So if the airport is in charge of enforcing the contracts and they're profiting off of people violating the contracts, they perhaps do not have any reason to crack down very hard. And
that is a great point. That is such a great point and such a problem, because then it becomes a question of who is the airport serving? Is it serving itself or is it serving the public? And I'm guessing the argument from the airport is the more money that we make, the less money we have to find from the public trough, if you will, to fix the airport or upgrade the airport. But I gotta say, going to the airport and looking at their $1 billion like ballroom project, like making the first terminal
sparkly floors,
super not like, it doesn't strike me as an entity that is spending money in a way that's respectful of like the public. Like, do we really need a really nice?
I will stand for this. I think they did a
crystal
great
tree?
job. It's gorgeous.
No, it is. It's beautiful, but like, do we really need to spend $1 billion on that? Why do we like? It's yes, the ballroom is nice. Do we really need to have spent $1 billion on that?
I think we are creating a very hospitable environment for these businesses to thrive. This airport is a huge driver. These restaurants that have these contracts are so lucrative. The Smoke and Bear Lodge Smoking Lounge, one of the most lucrative restaurants in the entire country. They made $20 million.
But let me ask you.
Let
Let me just challenge you. Let me ask you. Let's use the terminal $1 billion project. Would you prefer the project? The one that existed before they renovated it, save $1 billion and have everything at the airport be basically street priced? Or do we want a really nice giant, spectacle, sort of convention center style thing, and everything at the airport fleeces us? Like, I'll take option A and not option B. That's me.
I think the difference
I think
though
that's
is
Go on.
Well, go to a shitty airport and you might feel a little differently.
Right, but isn't there a middle ground?
That was my point.
Isn't there a middle ground?
Here's the problem. What we have is and this is one of the reasons why I think the regulations are messing up this market so much, is because the supply of leasable restaurant space is limited by the airport. If we built a second airport, we would have more competition.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I guess I would argue like there has to be a middle ground between like the old LaGuardia that was like a disgusting bus station and like, a crown jewel, sort of beautifully appointed airport that's funded by fleecing everybody who passes through it. Like, there has to be a middle ground. That's my take.
I have reached out to the airport people to talk about this, and I hope that we get a chance to talk to their head of concessions, because she's the one who responded to the auditor's report that you were mentioning a couple of years ago, and they did make some changes. What they used to do, they had a whole program for preferred concessionaires who they didn't make reapply for their spaces after the contracts were expired. So they basically were grandfathered into these nice deals and weren't ever reassessed. Cool. And then also what they did was when they were assessing new potential contractors to take over spaces, they would like score them, write down scores and evaluate them. And then they would shred the scores. So if ever there was a lawsuit, like there was famously a few years ago, no one would be able to go back and look at that documentation.
Can I also say one very quick thing? One very quick point about this when we talk about captive audiences, captive customers. This cannot be forgotten. you can't take a certain amount of liquid or, liquidish food into the airport. So talk about, it's one that like, that is a level of captivity that I think we need to underscore here. Part of the reason why you have captive pricing rules is because you've set up a boundary that says you can't bring in a basic necessity of life into this space. And so therefore, if you need that basic necessity of life, we're not going to use the fact that you're trapped to rip you off. Like let's not forget how captive you are at the airport.
Yeah, well, this is why the post 9/11 moment is so instructive, is because the social contract changed on the customer, but it didn't change for the concessionaires.
Yes.
And it's created this system of like misaligned incentives. And I if I were a lawmaker, if I were a city official, I would be looking at enforcement of these rules and putting some more guardrails on these rules. I think that's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have.
Yes, agree.
Can I say one last note on this? I'm sorry.
Yes,
there's
a
character involved in this whole world who, when I discovered this guy when I was reading up on this, I think I need to make space for him on my list of the 21 most influential Denverites of the 21st century. His name is Rod Tafoya. I had never heard of him, but he owns all the most lucrative contracts at the airport. The Timberline Grill.
Wait, what's his kids? Is he like a concessionaire company? Is he one of these?
His company is called Mission Yogurt. It was founded with just a yogurt shop in Arvada in the 80s, and he first got his first airport contract in 95 when it opened.
He was like, here's where the money is.
Ever since. He tapped a rich vein. He has a company of like hundreds of employees. He's the one that operates the Root Down, the Timberline Steaks. He operates an Einstein Brothers, KFC, Pizza Hut. This guy is making so much money at the airport, and clearly,
sounds like the DIA power broker you never knew. I want to meet this guy.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, we got to
get him on your show.
On the podcast. We got to
totally.
Talk to him. I have to know this guy.
We're going to move on. And David, for this last segment, you have a hot take for us, and I have not been prepped at all. I have no clue what you're going to give us. So shoot us your hot take.
Okay, so my hot take is I'm a big Denver Nuggets fan. If you're watching a video, you can see I've got a Denver Nuggets jersey on my wall.
You got Maxie the Miner on your shirt.
Yep, huge Denver Nuggets fan. I got the Christian Brown bobblehead at last night's game. I showed up like 3 hours early to get the Christian Brown bobblehead. So I'm like deep in this. And I think that a lot of the discussion about the Nuggets and whether they're going to go to the championship, et cetera, has been a lot about Jokic's health. It's been a lot about Aaron Gordon, AG's health. Will Jamal Murray stay healthy? But I actually think the skeleton key to unlock the Nuggets' championship potential is the much less discussed Cam Johnson, who, of course, Cam Johnson we traded for, we got him in the MPJ trade. And there's been a lot of discussion that MPJ is in New Jersey doing really, really well. And was this a bad trade because Cam hasn't put up numbers like MPJ and Cam got injured. But if you've been watching the last, week and a half, and after Cam Johnson came back, he went through this spell where he couldn't hit anything. He couldn't make shots. He was rattled. Like he had, what do they call it? They call it like the yips, right? Like he couldn't make his old jump shots. Now he is like making the shots he needs to make, and he's got more confidence. And it has opened up the whole floor. It has opened up the team is like 10 times better. And so my hot take is, if you want to understand whether we're going all the way, watch Cam Johnson. Like, he is the barometer here. Like, yes, AG, Jokic, Murray have to stay healthy, but like Cam, I think is like the secret key. I'm pulling for him.
I thought you were going to say David Edelman was the secret key. Everybody's been watching the coach. Yeah, that's.
They've been up. He's had people have been down on him. And
that's what I was seeing. But so
I think it's Cam. I think, and by the way, Cam hosts a great podcast, Old Man and the Three. Everybody should go listen. He's a great host.
Sounds like it's already better than MPJ's podcast, which was
it's definitely better than it. Actually,
good clips. Attention grabber.
He did a great episode where he interviewed MPJ. Like they were talking to each other as like they were traded for each other.
Whoa.
And it was super interesting. He's a great host, but I'm like, dude, you've got to like, I was a little worried that he's a little bit like, not a head case, but like he's been so rattled he couldn't make basic like 15-foot jump shots. I'm telling you, this guy is the key to whether we're going to the championship. That's my hot take.
And I would just say, too, a podcast is a good place to start because if we know anything about sports, is we want to know the personalities of these people and we want to know who we're invested in. And like, I have to say, I don't know a ton about Cam Johnson as a person or like what his aura is like. I mean,
he seems like such a cool dude.
Okay.
He seems like such a cool dude.
It doesn't take much for me. I'll buy in. Okay.
You should you should try to get him on the pod. I mean, he talks about like what would be actually. I'm pitching you. What would be cool is a pod about like what his impressions of Denver are as like somebody who hasn't lived here and get his like takes on like best and worst of Denver as someone who just moved here. That would be I would totally tune into that.
That could be a tricky one because you can be really a hater and then people really hate you, or you could be Bruce Brown and be like, I've been wearing this cowboy hat in my sleep. I've been waiting for you to take me back. So we'll
Bruce
see.
Brown. I mean, Bruce Brown. That's another good. But I love Bruce. But like, I'm not sure that would be an interesting interview because he loves like I want to hear from
Denver.
Cam. Like, what do you not like? What do you like? What do you think we could improve? Like, I want to hear that. That's my pitch for you.
I did hear a tip on this. Someone commented on one of our posts on TikTok the other day. My friend of mine, Ryan, he was like, apparently he goes to the Raising Cane's on Colorado Boulevard a lot, and he sees Peyton Watson there regularly after midnight.
Yeah.
So
I love a celebrity sighting in Denver.
We better not lose Peyton Watson. I mean, that for
feels
the
like
off
a foregone conclusion, right? They chose Brown.
No, don't say it. Don't say that. You're killing me because Peyton Watson is the future. If we lose Peyton Watson, I'm like I can't handle Peyton Watson going to the Lakers. I can't stand the Lakers. Peyton Watson is from LA. Like I feel like we're gonna screw this up. Like the Cronkies need to not allow this to happen.
Oh, yeah, I know. And anything involving the Lakers.
I don't want to see Peyton Watson in a Lakers jersey. Like the Cronkies have to not allow that to happen. Here I am. Here I am begging billionaires to prevent something from happening. I'm pathetic.
Did you get a hot dog at the game? What was your concession strategy at the game last night, David?
My concession strategy was I got there super early. I was up at the Altitude Sports Bar where they do the show up there, and
I love that.
I love that. I got hummus and vegetables. My dad got a hot dog. The hot dog was actually weirdly not horrifically priced. It was like, I think it was $5.
There you go.
So, that's a $5 hot dog.
Yes. I think the thing that I can't stand about, you talk about pricing, charging me 17 or 16 bucks for a can of beer is wrong. Like that is wrong. Like I am captive. Literally, there's a no re-entry policy. I can't go out, get a beer, and come back in.
Yeah, but I'm convinced people will pay anything for beer. They don't even care. They're like $27 Coors Light, fine.
I'm at a game. Like when I'm having a tough week, the main thing I focus in on, like I put in my mind, like at Nuggets game, holding beer. Like I'm gonna like that's like my Zen state, right? Like that's and like you're charging me $17. Like
you got a pregame, man. I think that's really the case. I mean, I know it's not as fulfilling as sitting there in the creative visualization you're doing right now of holding the beer.
I know but like that's a captive audience thing. I just can't tell. And it's a can. It's not even coming out of the draft.
No,
it's just a can. Like you're just pure profiteering here.
All right, David, Paul. Thank you. This was great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
See you all next time.
Hey, Bree here with Elizabeth Martinez from Compass Real Estate. We're breaking down some great Denver neighborhoods for people who are thinking about putting down roots. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey, Bree. How's it going?
So good. What neighborhood are we talking about today?
We're heading over to Ruby Hill in Southwest Denver.
Awesome. Okay. First question. What's your favorite piece of history that you like to share about this neighborhood?
So since my dad grew up here, he always reminds me that Ruby Hill, the park, was actually a landfill up until 1968.
You know, my mom also grew up here, and her middle school in Southeast Denver was also built on a landfill. So
there you go.
It's a pretty common story of that. Yeah, that creative reuse of a space. Okay, what kind of buyer is going to gravitate towards Ruby Hill?
For the most part, it's going to be first-time home buyers and some downsizers as well, since the homes tend to be smaller and they have big lots. Think starter home.
Okay. And what would be the price range for the average home in Ruby Hill?
So looking at 2025 numbers, just to give the actual case study, the prices are from $260,000 to $755,000. And in that, at $260,000, you're finding something that needs total fix up. And then $755,000 is an anomaly because it's a farmhouse built in 1939 on half of an acre. So let's talk about the average. So the average is about $450,000. And for that, you get a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, about 700 to 900 square feet, give or take a garage. And that could be totally fixed up and ready to move in.
Yeah, that's definitely well under the average median price in Denver proper. So that is definitely a good place to start. How would you describe this neighborhood? Is it urban? Is it suburban? What's it like when you walk around?
So since it was built in the 1950s, it was built more like suburbia, in terms of Denver definitions, because the commercial strips are on the main streets of Federal or Evans. You don't really have a lot of commercial within the neighborhoods, which the urban feel has.
Okay. And, speaking of that feel, one of the big parts of this neighborhood, one of the features I would say is Levitt Pavilion, which is inside Ruby Hill Park. What should prospective neighbors know about this concert venue?
So Levitt Pavilion came in 2017. It was an amazing addition to the neighborhood, built by Denver Parks and Rec. And it provides free concerts as well as paid concerts. So it's great for people all over the city, but especially those within walking distance to just go hang out at the park in the summer. Mind you, you have the sound, but the hill doesn't transfer as much sound into the neighborhood, which is great. Or you can sit at the top of the hill and always hear the concert. But it's really fun just to get your friends together, get your family together, and just go take a picnic for the evening.
And speaking of this park, there's this other really cool feature that I think also a lot of folks may not know about, which is the rail yard. What is the rail yard in Ruby Hill Park?
It's so cool. It's a free urban ski and snowboard park built by the Denver Parks and Rec and Winter Park Resort. It opened in 2007, and you can just bring your skis or your snowboard or your sled and go head to the hill. Now, the funny thing is they actually do have a snowmaking machine, obviously when it's affordable to do so for the city, but it is really cool that they make their own snow so that kids that don't always have access to the mountains, because it's an expensive sport, can go and learn on the rail yard.
I think that's the beauty of Ruby Hill, the park itself. It's like concerts in the summer. You could snowboard or ski in the winter. What two things that Colorado's really known for.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, Elizabeth, thanks for being here again. Check out elizabethmartinez.co to learn more. We'll have a link for you in our show notes as well, so you're just a click away. Thanks for listening. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Mission Yogurt President Rob Tafoya about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye. David, I was going to ask you if it was your choice or your producer's choice, the movie clips that you used throughout the first episode of Kingmaker, because I clocked National Lampoon's obviously is a running theme. Better Off Dead, very
Yes.
Gen X-y. My favorite
Yes.
clip is this 2 seconds you use of Jeremy Piven from Singles when he's yelling at Campbell Scott, "You are the king," while he's trying to buy a pregnancy test. And
It's a deep cut. It is a deep cut. Yeah, that's my choice. I mean, that's all those are all the movies that I grew up on.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I
appreciated the
actually
Singles.
really appreciate you knowing that exact clip of Jeremy Piven.